Welcome, everyone. As community health professionals, you're literally on the front lines every single day. You're dealing with everything from infectious diseases to chronic physical conditions. But today, we're using this explainer to look at an urgent briefing on a pathology that you can't always just spot under a microscope or, easily detect on a standard patient chart. We're looking at a condition that is absolutely not just a fleeting emotion. It is a deeply rooted, silent epidemic, and it has severe long-term consequences for our entire society. Think about it for a second. Have you ever been surrounded by people, maybe even in a crowded room, and yet still felt completely alone? We're not talking about physical isolation here. We are talking about emotional isolation. It's the kind of loneliness that just follows a patient everywhere. It's there at work, it's there at school, and it's especially there late at night when the room gets quiet. It's incredibly personal, but the crazy thing is, it's happening on a massive scale. It's literally hiding in plain sight within the very crowded spaces we navigate every single day. So, to unpack this crisis, our briefing today has a clear medical arc. We're going to define the silent epidemic, examine its physical impact, and explore the digital illusion of connection. Then, we'll uncover some hidden demographics, analyze our post-pandemic reality, and finally, discuss how to actually prescribe connection. Let's jump right in. Section 1. The new silent epidemic. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it frames the sheer staggering scale of this crisis. Millions of people across the US and the UK are experiencing this profound emotional disconnect right now. But because the loneliest people often smile the biggest, it slips right past our standard diagnostic criteria. As health professionals, you're warning patients about diet and tobacco constantly. But look at these risk levels. Experts are finding that chronic loneliness is actually more dangerous than obesity, and it's more harmful to physical health than smoking 15 cigarettes a day. That is wild. This is a massive public health crisis that significantly increases the risk of depression, anxiety, heart disease, dementia, and even early death. Section 2. The physical impact of emotional isolation. We really have to shift our focus to the clinical reality of how the brain actually interprets a lack of connection. Because loneliness isn't just in the mind, right? It manifests in the flesh. For thousands of years, human survival depended entirely on tribes and communities. Being isolated literally meant you were in life-threatening danger. So today, when humans feel socially isolated for long periods, that ancient threat response system kicks right in and the brain enters survival mode. The body is basically constantly sounding an alarm, and that leads to severe exhaustion, overthinking, and chronic anxiety. And over time, a really dangerous physiological cascade happens. It starts with that prolonged emotional isolation, which triggers a massive spike in stress hormones and totally ruins sleep quality. This naturally leads to rising inflammation all throughout the body. And finally, chronic loneliness literally weakens the immune system itself. So this lack of emotional connection, it is actively causing physical damage to the patients sitting right there in your waiting rooms. Section 3. The digital connection illusion. So what are the environmental risk factors actually driving this pathology? Well, we live in the most connected time in human history, yet millions have literally never felt more isolated. Why is that? It's because we've swapped out genuine interaction for digital stimulation. Just a few decades ago, people actually knew their neighbors. They met face-to-face. Today, before your feet even touch the floor in the morning, your brain is just overloaded with notifications. We've traded family meals for passive scrolling. Social media promised us connection, but instead, people are spending hours watching strangers live these seemingly perfect lives. And this constant passive consumption, it just breeds comparison, leaving people believing their own lives are entirely empty. But here's the truth. The human brain cannot be tricked. Deep down, our neurology totally knows the difference between real companionship and cheap digital attention. A like is not a hug. A comment is definitely not companionship. And followers are not true friends. When we try to find emotional fulfillment through a glowing screen, we just end up starving for real, authentic connection. Section 4. Hidden demographics in crisis. To properly combat this epidemic, we've got to look way beyond the surface and identify who is actually suffering in silence. It's not just the elderly or the obviously isolated folks who are at risk here. Adults across the board are struggling immensely, and experts are noticing a particularly sharp rise in male isolation across the US and the UK. A lot of men today have fewer close friends than ever before, and some have absolutely nobody they can openly talk to about their stress, their fears, or depression. Society has conditioned them to just stay strong, right? to hide their emotions and completely avoid vulnerability. But human beings were never designed to suppress connection like that. And when that emotional isolation builds up over the years, it becomes incredibly dangerous.
We absolutely must recognize the disguises of loneliness, because it rarely looks the way people expect it to. Sometimes it's hiding right there inside a crowded room, someone laughing with friends while secretly feeling completely invisible, or posting super happy photos online while crying alone at night. As clinicians, you might see loneliness masquerading as professional success or as outgoing confidence, or sometimes simply as quiet silence.
Section 5. The post-pandemic social reality. We really can't discuss this crisis without acknowledging the huge environmental catalyst that accelerated it, COVID-19. Let's move to and see how this builds. Pre-pandemic, there was a baseline of normal, everyday connection. Then, lockdowns forced millions into abrupt, forced isolation. Schools closed, offices emptied out overnight, and for a lot of people, that intense loneliness just never fully resolved. Present day, we are really seeing the fallout from that. We're seeing lingering social anxiety, faded friendships, and this tough reality where many people quietly became comfortable just being alone, even when it is actively hurting them emotionally. However, I want to draw a really vital clinical distinction here. Being alone and being lonely are not the same thing at all. Healthy solitude is actually great for you. It can improve your creativity, your peace, and your self-awareness. But loneliness is a pathology. It is the incredibly painful feeling of being emotionally disconnected against your will. It's that deep, lingering, heavy feeling that nobody truly gets you. Section 6. Prescribing genuine human connection. Okay, let's dive into this. So how do community health professionals actually intervene in a crisis that is so deeply rooted in modern life? The solution sounds surprisingly simple, but in our fast-paced modern world, it is becoming increasingly rare. We can't just prescribe a pill to magically cure emotional disconnect, right? We have to prescribe a fundamental change in behavior. The prescribed interventions are actually just small moments of genuine human connection. Not texting, not reacting to stories online. We need to encourage real face-to-face conversations. Prescribe eye contact, recommend active listening, suggest taking a short walk with a friend, or really prioritizing a family dinner without phones at the table. Encourage your patients to ask others, how are you really doing? Studies literally show that even these tiny moments of being truly present can dramatically improve emotional health and yank the brain right out of that dangerous survival mode. So, the crucial point is this: we are basically fighting an uphill battle against our own culture. Modern society rewards productivity far, far more than connection. People are constantly praised for grinding harder, working nonstop, and building up their status. But in the process of all that, they are completely sacrificing their relationships. We are looking at a generation of people who are waking up highly successful on paper, but totally emotionally empty inside. Look, at the end of life, very, very few people are going to wish they had spent more time scrolling on their phones. We have to remind ourselves, and definitely our patients, of the core human need, and that is connection. It's not luxury, it's not fame, and it's certainly not followers. We were never meant to navigate life emotionally alone, and genuine connection really is the only true antidote to this epidemic. Which leaves us with a real challenge, because unless we fundamentally change how we interact with each other, this silent epidemic is only going to continue to grow. So, I want to leave you with this final thought to apply to your own life and your own clinical practice. The next time someone asks you, how are you going to tell the truth? And when you ask someone else, will you actually stop and listen to their answer? Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer. Keep checking on your people, because one real, honest conversation could mean a whole lot more than you realize.